Hello, I'm Helen Bradley. Welcome to this video tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can process your images on importing them into Lightroom. In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can apply some processing to your images as you import the images into Lightroom. But before I do that, let's have a look and see why we might want to do it. You may already have had the experience that as you import images into Lightroom, they look as if they're full of color and sharpness, and then a second or two later, all the color disappears and they look something like this image will look. And what's happening is that Lightroom, when it first imports the image, is using the preview from the back of the camera to show the image to you. And the image on the back of the camera is a JPEG image that has all the adjustments applied to it that you have set in your camera. For example, inside my camera, I have vibrancy set up quite high because I like my images to look colorful and vibrant, which is why I see a really colorful preview of my image as soon as it has been downloaded. But then Lightroom does something, and what it does is it has a look at the real image, not the JPEG version, and then it shows me the real image without those adjustments applied to it, and that's this version here. Now I prefer to see my images in their color that I see from the back of the camera. So what I do is I apply that color change to the images as they're imported into Lightroom. And the setting that controls this is here in the Develop module, and it's the camera calibration. So I'm just going to open up the camera calibration here, and you can see that it's set to Adobe Standard. If I want my image to look as it does when it's come off the back of the camera, I'll choose Camera Standard. You can see that this is a much brighter, more colorful version of the image. And there's also an embedded option, which is a little bit greener, a little bit more colorful here, but not as colorful as Camera Standard. And the flattest of the colors is the Adobe Standard. Now, these are nothing more than a starting point for processing your image. So you're not destroying your image, you're not doing really anything to your image by using one of these settings in preference to the other. It's just a personal preference. So if you want to make sure that your images look as bright and as colorful as they did on the back of the camera when you import them into Lightroom, let's go and see how we would create a preset to do this. And let's just stop at the camera calibration. We can do all sorts of things with an import preset, but I have for this image set my camera calibration to Camera Standard because that's my starting point. And let's say that typically for my images I added a little bit of additional exposure and some additional clarity as well. Now if I did this to most of my images most of the time, it would behove me to create an import preset that would apply these settings to my images. So I'm going to apply the things that I would typically want to do to all of my images as a starting point for editing them. And now let's go and create a preset from that. I'm going to click here to create a new preset. And I'm going to call this an import preset. Now, this is just a develop preset, but I want to make sure that it's really easy for me to find. So I'm just going to call it import preset Helen. And we're going to look for that name in a minute. And I'm just adding it to a folder called Helen Creative Effects. But now I'm going to select what I want to be in that preset. Well, I do want calibration because that gave me the additional color. And I do want vibrance and saturation and any color adjustments. And I want anything that came in from the basic panel as well as clarity. You can also apply some sharpening, you can apply noise reduction, whatever it is that you want to apply to all of your images all of the time as a starting point for editing them. And once I've selected all the things that I want selected and deselected anything I don't want to include, I'm going to click Create. And now let's go and see how we would apply that imports preset as we import images into Lightroom. Well, we're going to the library and I'm going to click on Import. And now I'm going to locate a folder of images. Well, I'm going back to the Sweden images to pick up those images that have not yet been imported. So I'm just going to select New Photos. And these are the images that haven't yet been imported into my folder. I'm going to click Apply during import, and then from the Develop Settings drop-down list, I'm going to go and find my preset. And it was in Helen Creative Effects, and it's this import preset. And what that does is it will apply those settings to these images as they're imported into Lightroom. So now let's go ahead and click Import. And as each of these images is imported, that new fix is being applied to them. Now that's just a starting point, of course, for fixing the images, but it does mean that they're being given a head start in being fixed. I'm applying the camera standard profile that I like, and then a bit of extra clarity and vibrance to the images, so they start out looking a little bit better than they would have been had they been imported using, for example, the Adobe standard profile. So I'm going to select this image and go into the Develop module, and you'll see here that some clarity has already been applied to the image, and we can go ahead now and then just use that as a starting point for fixing the image. The applying of the import preset has done nothing more than just change the starting point for our processing, so we can end up in exactly the same place as we would have ended up had we not applied that preset on import. You'll just find that it'll give you a head start, which is something that you might prefer to see. Certainly I don't like seeing the Adobe standard processing applied to my images. I'm really disappointed when I see them like that, and applying the camera standard profile is a really good start for me, and any other settings are just an added bonus. I'm Helen Bradley. Thank you for joining me for this video tutorial. Look out for more of my video tutorials here on my YouTube channel, and consider subscribing to my channel and you'll be alerted when new videos are released. And visit my website at projectwoman.com, where you'll find more tips, tricks and tutorials on a range of applications, including Photoshop, Lightroom, Illustrator and a whole lot more.